Are you looking for a jumbo acoustic guitar mid-price that's all solid wood? Then you're going to want to stick around and watch this video. Stay tuned. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, visit our spring store link below for custom designed t-shirts, and check out our podcast, the Fretboard Confessionals, wherever you get podcasts. Where we talk about guitars like we're doing today. We have two mid-priced, I'd say over $1,000, under $1,000, jumbo acoustic electric guitars from two reputable companies that are all solid wood. And that is kind of a specific demographic. One, there's not a lot of jumbos on the market anymore.
Yeah.
Two, there's not a lot that fall in this price range that are all solid wood. Yeah. And we've got Gibson and Guild going at it, the two Gs.
The two Gs.
The
Talking
OGs.
about my generation. And then that one.
This is my favorite guitar named after a truck.
Yeah, I heard that one got best in its class by J.D. Power and Associates.
Well, you know, every April in Texas is Truck Month. And every May in Texas is Guild Jumbo Month. That's what I'm saying. So this is the Guild F-150ce. I wonder if they thought about that when they named it.
F-150ce,
The
City
F-150.
Edition.
The,
Yeah.
city, the city edition.
Like a King Ranch, but for the city.
I got the King Ranch. This is the Guild. So.
Yeah, there's too many crossovers with guitars and cars right now. They're playing into that hot rod kind of collector, but what was it, the GT with the C-Class bracing? Come on.
Yep, there you go.
But yeah, jumbos, it's like there may be less jumbos, but be bold. Get something big.
Be bold. You want that big sound, you got to go with a big guitar. But, you know, truthfully, jumbos, just like dreadnoughts, they come from an era when, you know, to make the guitar louder, you made the guitar bigger. I think the reason there's fewer on the market is due to amplification.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need it from an amplification standpoint or an amplitude standpoint, but they also have their own kind of sound to them, which is different, and that's just owed to the fact that they are big guitars. You've got a big soundboard, and you are moving a lot of air with that, but you have to move a lot of energy through the strings to get that moving. And so jumbos, as a result, tend to be big chord guitars.
Yeah.
It's not something you pick for intimate fingerstyle moments. Maybe
not like intuitively, but I think they're great recording guitars too for like really nice close mic stuff, and you know it's a sound like you said that you can really only get from a jumbo.
Where they do work for fingerstyle stuff is when you watch guys like another McKee, Andy McKee, who's far better than I am.
He's just different.
He has the same barber that I do though.
I think so, yeah.
So these guys who are very percussive in their fingerstyle, they are generating a lot of energy. And the additional kind of echo chamber of the body works. And so if you are playing that style, a jumbo's great.
Yeah.
Also, it's really nice to have like a longer scale, big body guitar if you're doing alternate tunings. If you're tuning down, the body shape really, really works for that. So you know, your big cowboy chords or your percussive, you know, down-tuned stuff, these are going to be guitars that excel at that. But it's hard to find something. I find that there's kind of this gap in the market of flat top acoustic guitars that are jumbo body. You either have very affordable models, they're like $400 to $600, or you have very expensive models that are like $3,000. And this price point, there's not a lot of representation. So it's good to look at these two for what you get. And so what do you get? You get solid wood on both of these. Let's talk about the G-200 first. We've done videos on this.
Yes. Generation collection, the most polarizing topic of 2021 now bleeds into 22. And I don't know if you saw, I gave a look inside, and it's clean.
It's a very well put together guitar.
It's a good guitar. But this is of the higher end of the generation because it does have the pickup in there. Also, it's huge, walnut back and sides, and a spruce top, satin finish, and your player port because it's in the generation collection. Obviously, 200, it's inspired by the SJ200.
Right.
But it's cool, and obviously on a lot of SJ200s that people are getting, normally not going to have a cutaway. Nice to have the cutaway because if you're Andy McKee, got your leads up there.
Yep. And this is, around the $2,000 price point because it's the higher end of the Generation collection, but it's U.S. made. Okay, so for almost $1,000 less, not quite, is the Guild. It's also all solid wood, but you're dealing with the more traditional combination of Sitka spruce and East Indian rosewood back and sides. That's your classic big acoustic sound combination. Yeah. You've got your highs, you've got your bass, you've got overtones going on in there. 1 3/4 inch nut width on this, which is a little bit wider than the 1.73 inch nut width that the Gibson has. Good action for the most part. Nice appointments like the pearl. It's a gloss finish versus the satin finish. Mm-hmm. So, and you get a basic Fishman pickup system in this as well. Open gear tuners. You've got the nice Guild shield logo up on the headstock, and you get a gig bag with either of these. Yeah. So they're both great values. This one is less expensive than the Gibson, but it's made overseas. And I've said this how many times, that's the give and take, right? You want a US made guitar, then you have to get to a price point, strip down the options to make that guitar faster and easier to produce in the US to reach that price point. If you want more features at a lower price point or the same price point, then you import the guitar where the labor's cheaper and you can have, more features. But I mean, not many more. It's a gloss finish versus satin, which may or may not be a benefit.
True.
That's really just choice. You get pearloid, cool. Doesn't do anything for the sound. It's pretty.
Solid rosewood.
Solid rosewood.
Pretty hard to find solid rosewood at that price.
So the least expensive Gibson jumbo you can get with solid rosewood is the G-200 Studio Rosewood, which is over $3,000.
Yeah.
So there you go. More than twice the price of this. And they're very, very different guitars to play.
Yeah.
You just played it a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to demo it here in a minute. But they're doing the same jumbo thing, but they're kind of coming back at it from different standpoints, as Gibson and Guild do.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we can talk more about it on the other side. This is a big guitar that feels smaller, I think, than it is. That's a big guitar that definitely feels
bigger. Yeah. Well, let's take a listen, and then we'll talk about some of the dimensional differences and playability differences between these two guitars. Check it out. So there you have it, the tonal comparison between these two guitars. Now, going into that comparison, you made a great point, which is that they do feel different dimensionally, and that's because that's a narrower guitar.
Yeah.
It's shallower. It's not as deep as this more traditional jumbo is. And so it's so wide across, and yet it feels a little smaller in your lap as it's pressing against your body. And I noticed that while playing it immediately. And that changes things. It changes how far away the neck is from you. It changes where your arm's resting and your pick attack and everything else about it. So, keep those kinds of things in mind. But you've played both of these a little bit here. What were your thoughts? And I'll give mine.
I mean, so I think that plays into it, the feeling of the size, because definitely the lower bout and everything is similar on both. This one I think is a more comfortable guitar to play. I kind of lean towards the tone of the Guild more. And I think it's an interesting give and take because we talked a lot about the Generation Collection. Player port, you can hear yourself in a much different way. And it's cool because oftentimes, like when I reach for one of the Generations, when we're playing them in store with customers and all that, I like the G-00, I like the G45. They're smaller. The sound that's coming at you sounds wildly different than this one. And this one, you get the jumbo tone coming right at you. So it's a lot more bass. Chris commented on like that classic Gibson, warm thud.
Thud.
Yeah, it's definitely a thud sound, but the people that love Gibson go for it because of that sound. It's a very old school American guitar sound.
If you don't know what I mean by that, it's that you hit that low E string, right? And you get this lo-fi, thum, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of brilliance to it. And it's kind of supposed to be like that. And I love it for like old bluegrass, Delta blues type stuff.
Folk
Any of that,
stuff,
it's perfect. Because that's what was on so many of those recordings. It's like your ear wants that.
I think about that sound when I think about Andy Powers doing Grand Pacific. It's like really nice folky tone. On the other hand, I think about it with Spruce and Rosewood, something like this, that low E is more piano-esque.
There's a lot more brilliance to it, and I'm glad you brought up how Taylor did the Grand Pacific, because there's this whole notion of the shape of the note, right? The more pointed, kind of triangular shape that note is, we describe that as being brilliant, right? You're hearing kind of that leading edge of the note, and so there's a lot of, you'll have bass, but there's treble in there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with this, the Gibson sound tends to be lo-fi, which is more rounded, right? Not hi-fi, and so that leading edge of the note is blunted. And there's if you play around with different guitars, acoustic and electric, you'll notice this, right? That leading edge shape of the note can go from very pointed but broad, so you're getting a lot of broad EQ in every note, but it's kind of that brilliancy. That's a typical Taylor. You hear every single note in the chord, right?
Yeah.
But it's not anemic. To cheap guitars that have nothing but string sound. And so it's the very pointed, but there's nothing behind it.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of broaden that and blunt the edge, and you can get this kind of rounded triangular sound all the way to just a very round sound. And that's what you get with typical Gibson lo-fi tone. It's this round sound. There's everything in there, but it is just like
compressed. And I think with that sound, walnut works. It's a nice tone wood for the Gibson sound. And I think what draws me towards the tone of the Guild is I want my jumbo to be rosewood sound. And it's definitely a personal preference thing. This guitar, I will say again, is more comfortable to play for me. But sometimes when you're going for a certain sound, I think it's worth it to make yourself a little uncomfortable to produce the sound that you hear in your head. And I want my jumbo to sound like that. Both great options. What are your thoughts?
So I have some very specific thoughts after playing both of these. I think one, the Gibson has a better setup out of the box. The action is generally lower across the entire neck, and therefore it was a little bit more comfortable for me to play, despite the fact that I tend to prefer a wider nut width. So that was noticeable to me. Two, the Guild is definitely more of the guitar for the big cowboy chords, unless you are playing very percussive style, fingerstyle stuff like I talked about. I find it to be a little bit anemic unless you're giving it the energy it wants. And I noticed that while playing through some of the demos, hearing some of the high-end strings not ring out like I wanted to, realizing it's a big guitar, it needs more energy, giving it more energy than what I would typically play with, and it responding accordingly. And so that comes down to knowing kind of your playing style. I tend to have smaller body guitars because I tend to play with a lighter touch. I tend to play, without really wailing on the guitars. Yeah. But I know so many players where they've got a heavy pick or they've got a medium pick that they bend so that's heavier.
Yeah.
And they landed the guitar. And this kind of guitar will give you reward for doing that, whereas a small guitar would be like, that's too much, I give up.
Yeah.
So this guitar is really more traditional jumbo. That guitar I found to be actually surprisingly more responsive. Mm-hmm. I could play it with a lighter touch than the Guild. I think there's probably 3 reasons. 1 is the bracing, 2 is the shallower body, and 3 is the satin finish, just being...
Letting it breathe.
Yeah, just letting it breathe, letting the top move more.
It's got a whole other lung over here.
And the player port probably also lends itself to that because you're hearing more stuff with some immediacy. So that was kind of my take on these two. They're both really good values. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes down to what someone would want. Here's my thoughts, and see if you think I'm crazy. If you're wanting a really good value of a guitar with as many features, right, with pretty inlay and your gig bag and your pickup and solid wood construction and, gloss finish and stuff, and you don't care where it's built, right? You just want that value. Then Guild's knocking it out of the park with these.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to find anything in this price point with this mix of features, that's available and plays really well.
Yeah.
But if if the brand or the location of where it's built is more important, you will have to forego features.
Yeah.
And I say features, again, I used to think gloss meant more expensive. I don't anymore. We've just done some really expensive stuff with Taylor where it's satin finish.
Yeah.
And it's more like an orchestral instrument. And so, I've come over the years to appreciate thin finish over anything.
Yeah.
So I like the Grover tuners. I like the setup on that's really nice. I like ebony.
Yeah.
And it's got a cool sound. It's not for everybody. This is going to be a more brilliant sound for sure. So
yeah, I think it's worth talking more about maybe podcast time or something, but within the say 600 to sub 2,000 range of a mid-range high-end guitar, which is where a lot of people are looking for something, and that's a big range. But a lot of people don't want to spend over $2,000. A lot of people want to spend around $1,000. I think Guild has a great niche going on right now because they offer really nice solid wood instruments for a great price. I think that price range is something Gibson is trying super hard to find their footing in because everybody knows them. If you've seen all the other YouTubers that I will not name doing videos recently about how Gibson's really expensive, less young players are buying them and playing them.
Except Gibson's I will say this, Gibson is the only company, put this in the context of all the price increases that are going on. They made a mistake with their electric guitars in 2015. They were under different leadership. They threw robotic tuners on everything. They raised the price like 35% across the board, and they ended up going through bankruptcy. It was a bad decision.
Yeah.
And they reversed that. They made changes to the lineup that they knew people wanted, and they lowered prices. I can't think of another guitar company. You can criticize them for all sorts of stuff, right? But if you just say they're only expensive, they're not. They make guitars in a broad range of things. And to the point you were just making, one thing that I find refreshing, there's 2 schools of thought on this, right? Gibson years ago decided their import guitars would fall under a different brand, Epiphone. And they've not gone back on that. And they could make a guitar overseas and call it a Gibson. And they're not.
Yeah.
What they're doing is trying to make the Gibsons as affordable as possible and offer more expensive Epiphones. So there's actually this crossover that's taking place, which is very unusual, where higher end Epiphones cost, and it happens in the electric guitar world too. There's high end Epiphone Les Pauls that cost more than like low end tribute Les Pauls do.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah.
I just think so. Hear me out. There was a point in time where you couldn't get yourself a Les Paul standard without robotic tuners.
Right.
We're now in a point where you can't get a sub $1,500 guitar acoustic from Gibson that doesn't have a player port. I think this is a great foray into creating an affordable thing, and if they were to extend that line into something with less of a polarizing feature, maybe do a spruce and sapele, satin finished J45 kind of thing. I love the G45s as they were prior to the generation. Kind of bummed that they stopped that. I think the walnut was great, and on those they just didn't have the player port.
Well, effectively, G45 is the same thing with the player port.
But I think a lot of people would say, I just want a G45 without the player.
I just don't get. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it's so polarizing. Like, if you don't like it, they sell a sound hole cover.
That's
right?
true.
But how many people for years, through the 90s and the early aughts, bought guitars with an ugly preamp on the side where the player port is, right? There's an ugly preamp there that eventually went out and you couldn't replace it. And so you were just left with this preamp.
5-pound piece of
in the side of your guitar. I get that people have made it a thing. I just, as a guitar player, I don't see it as a thing. They're certainly not the first ones to do it.
Yeah.
They won't be the last ones to do it. There's affordable brands that do it. There are $14,000, $30,000, individual luthier built guitars that feature similar things. So,
all I'm saying, comment below if you have thoughts on this. If Gibson made, say, a $1,000 acoustic, something
Without
different
the
than
player
walnut, something different than having a player port, would it be more attractive?
I'll tell you the benefit of walnut. Walnut's a really fantastic tone wood, and it's also, and I would say better than sapele. Also, it's a North American tone wood.
That's true.
It's not from Africa, which means that the import issues are not a problem. So, just saying. I'm just throwing that out there.
Let's do a walnut v sapele video.
That'd be great. I mean, they're very similar, but I think walnut has a broader range, and I think it's prettier.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a prettier wood. You do woodworking. How many tables out of sapele do you want to make?
I make quite a bit out of walnut. But I think we're getting off the rails here, and we can...
Big time.
Sorry, but...
This is why we have a podcast.
Yeah, last thing I'll say is I think sapele has gotten longer recognition of it's the cheaper mahogany, and a lot of people just interchange those now and don't care. Walnut...
We did a podcast about that, in fact.
Oh, yeah. So let's pick up the rest of this conversation.
Anyways, what the video was about was that these are great, affordable-esque acoustic flat-top jumbo guitars. You pick your poison. Here are the things that you consider. I think better playability, feels smaller, even though it's a jumbo. It's a little bit more resonant, but it doesn't have that brilliance that you probably want out of an acoustic guitar. This has that classic brilliant sound. It needs a setup, I think, to get it to the playability of that. It's made overseas to get it to the price point, but it's a huge value for an all-solid wood acoustic guitar from Guild. And we have both of these in stock. So if you're interested in either one of these or anything else from these builders, you go to
alamomusic.com.
There you go. I have to give you something to do. So alamomusic.com, and you can check out all the specs. You can chat with us live with our associates on there and find the guitar to suit your needs, because at the end of the day, the best guitar in the world is the one that you're playing. So keep playing, watching our videos, and coming back for more. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you next time.